You are standing in a supermarket, holding a loaf of bread. It costs almost nothing. It took you 4 seconds to reach for it. And sitting inside that loaf is 11,000 years of wheat, bred and rebred by human hands until it stopped being a wild grass and became a crop that cannot survive without you. You have been told a story about how that happened. You have probably never questioned it. The story goes like this. Your ancestors hunted animals and gathered plants, and it was exhausting and it was uncertain. Then somebody noticed that dropped seeds grew back. Farming began. Food became reliable, and reliable food meant surplus. And surplus meant that not everybody had to spend the day finding dinner. So a few people were freed up. They became chiefs and priests and builders. And only then, once the grain was in the ground and the bellies were full, did anyone have the time and the manpower to drag stone up a hill and carve it into something sacred. Bread first, God second. It is a clean story. It is also almost entirely wrong. The real answer is far stranger. On a limestone ridge in southeastern Turkey, there is a monument built by people who had no farms, no villages, no pottery, no metal, no wheel, and not one domesticated animal to pull anything anywhere. They built it anyway, and the wheat in the loaf you are holding may exist because they did. The hill is called Gobekli Tepe. In Turkish, roughly Potbelly Hill. Here is the first thing that should unsettle you. Archaeologists walked straight over the top of it and saw nothing at all. In 1963, a survey team, including a researcher named Peter Benedict, crossed that ridge, catalogued it, and noted the broken slabs of limestone poking up through the dirt. They decided the slabs were grave markers. A Byzantine cemetery, maybe. Nothing that needed digging. They wrote it down and they moved on. Those slabs were not grave markers. They were the tips of pillars. And the pillars were more than 11,000 years old. How does something that old sit in plain sight and get ignored? Because nobody was looking for it. Nobody expected it to exist, so nobody saw it. It took another 3 decades for someone to look again. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt read through those old survey notes and recognized what the first team had missed. He began excavating the following year. He kept excavating that hill until he died in 2014. What came out of the ground rewrote the timeline. Picture great oval enclosures cut into the hillside, each one ringed with enormous T-shaped pillars of pale limestone. The tallest stand 5.5 meters high and weigh somewhere around 10 tons each. And down in the quarry, a short walk away, lies one that was never finished. Roughly 7 meters long, still half attached to the bedrock, estimated by most researchers at something close to 50 tons. It is still lying there, cut, shaped, abandoned, waiting for a crew that never came back. So think about the problem. How do you move 50 tons of stone with no wheel, no ox, no horse, no metal chisel, no rope factory, no crane, no pulley? You cannot. Not alone, and not with a family, and not with a band of 30 people. You need hundreds of human beings in one place at one time, organized and crucially fed. Look closer at the pillars and it gets stranger. They are not blank. They are carved deeply with animals. Foxes with their teeth bared, wild boar, scorpions, snakes pouring down the stone in long columns, vultures with their wings spread open, cranes, ducks, aurochs. The aurochs being the vast wild cattle that once roamed Europe and Asia before humans hunted them out of existence entirely. Notice what is missing from that list? Not one farm animal, not a sheep, not a goat, not a cow, not a dog on a rope. Every single creature carved into that hill is wild, dangerous, or both. The rubbish tells the same story as the art. Sift the debris packed around those enclosures and you find bones, tens of thousands of them. Gazelle, aurochs, wild boar, wild birds, almost nothing domesticated. Because at that moment in history, there was almost nothing domesticated anywhere on Earth. These were hunter-gatherers. By every model in every textbook, they were not supposed to be capable of this. So the question sharpens. Who fed the builders? This is where the answer stops being about stone and starts being about bread. And it begins with a wheat field. In 1997, a geneticist named Manfred Huhn and his colleagues ran an experiment that sounds simple and was not. They took modern domesticated einkorn wheat, einkorn being one of the very first crops human beings ever grew, and they fingerprinted its DNA. Then they compared that fingerprint against wild einkorn still growing right across the Near East, hunting for its closest living relatives. Essentially, a paternity test for a species. The trail led to one mountain, a volcanic ridge called Karakada. Karakada sits roughly 30 kilometers from Gobekli Tepe, a long walk. A morning's drive today. Sit with that for a second. The genetic birthplace of one of the founding crops of human civilization lies within sight of the hills around the oldest monumental architecture ever discovered. The wheat and the temple were born in the same small corner of the world at almost the same moment. Coincidence is still possible, but coincidence is doing an enormous amount of work there, isn't it? And there is a mechanism. Oliver Dietrich and his colleagues at the German Archaeological Institute found traces of it cut directly into the rock. Scattered around the site are huge stone vessels, vats, effectively, the largest of them holding somewhere near 160 litres. Inside several of those vats, chemical analysis turned up oxalate residues. Oxalate is a compound that forms when grain is soaked in water and left to ferment. Now, be careful here, because this is where the internet usually oversells it. That residue is not proof that anyone was brewing beer. No serious researcher claims that it is. But it is precisely what you would expect to find if hundreds of people were being gathered on a waterless hilltop and fed something made from soaked grain. And feeding them is not a footnote. It is the entire problem. There is no spring on that summit. There is no river. Every drop of water and every mouthful of food had to be carried up or caught or grown. So flip the sequence around. What if farming did not build the temple? What if the temple built farming? Now the honest part, because this story has moved on since Schmidt died, and it has not moved in a tidy direction. Lee Clare, who leads the project today, has pushed back hard on the neat version of events. Gobekli Tepe was not a lonely empty cathedral visited by pilgrims and abandoned between festivals. There are cisterns cut into the bedrock to catch rainwater. There are structures that look domestic, ordinary, lived in. People were not just visiting that hill. Some of them were living on it. Does that make it less strange? It makes it more strange, because it means the monument was not separate from daily life. It was daily life, and it was never one site either. Nekmi Karul and the Tash Tepela project, the name simply means stone hills, have now identified around a dozen related sites scattered across that same region. Karahan Tepe, Sayburç, Sefer Tepe, site after site, all from the same world. At Karahan Tepe there is a chamber carved down into solid bedrock, with 11 pillars rising from the floor and a human head emerging from the wall to watch them. This was not one eccentric building made by one unusual group. This was a culture, a whole society doing this for centuries across a landscape. Which leads to the fragments that a physical anthropologist named Julia Greski examined, and to the part of this story that most people never hear. Among the human bone recovered from Gobekli Tepe, Greski and her team identified pieces of skull carrying deep grooves, long, deliberate incisions cut with stone tools, running along the bone. One fragment had been drilled straight through. That is not damage from a fight. That is not butchery for food. Those skulls were worked deliberately after death, carved, and quite possibly hung. So here is the twist, and it is the reason this hill matters more than any pretty photograph of it suggests. The oldest monument on Earth was raised by people who had not yet invented the farm, the pot, the wheel, or the city. And it may be that they invented the farm precisely because they needed to keep coming back to it. The gathering came first, the gods came first, the work came first. Agriculture may not have been humanity's great prize at all. Agriculture may have been the bill, and the cost of that bill is written into the bodies. Read the skeletons from the thousands of years that follow the first farms, and a pattern shows up again and again. People get shorter than their hunting ancestors. Their teeth get worse. Disease rises because crowding and livestock breed illness. Their joints and spines show the wear of the same motion repeated 10,000 times. Your ancestors did not farm their way into an easier life. They farmed their way into a harder one, and they never stopped. Why not? Because something on that hill was worth it to them, something they could not walk away from even when the price arrived, which is the part that should follow you out of the supermarket. Look at your own week. You wake to an alarm you did not choose. You commute. You work at something abstract for 8 hours. Then you do it again, and you keep doing it. And if you are honest, none of that is what makes your life feel like a life. What makes it feel like a life is the wedding you flew across a country for. The stadium where 80,000 strangers sang the same words at once. The funeral where everybody came. The room, once a week, where people gather to believe the same thing together. None of those things feed you. Every one of them cost you. And they are the ones you would not give up. You still build the temple first, and then you organize your entire working life to keep paying for it. That instinct is not modern. It is not a symptom of your job or your century or your phone. It was already there, fully formed, on a hilltop in Anatolia 11,500 years ago, in people who chose to haul 50 tons of limestone up a slope with their bare hands before anyone on Earth had thought to plant a field. So the story you were told has the order backwards. You are standing in a supermarket, holding a loaf of bread. It is not where civilization began. It is the receipt.